Hi. Hey, you guys. I know people have started commenting on the fact that I just look and smile for the first couple of minutes. Seconds. But I look and smile because this is a live video and I have to wait for people to get the notifications for the live before I start talking. So this is just a time for me to look cute, look radiant. Welcome. Hi, another edition of Satin Pillow Talk. You know why I like this space? I like this space because it gives me just an area away from for Harriet to really work through some things and even things that happen on for Harriet, right? Good morning. Hi. Also, I'm going to be a little tilted because the tripod from my phone is messing up, so tilted. Hi. All right, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. And I rarely use the term gaslighting because I actually think it's overused. And I actually think that sometimes people use the term gaslighting to gaslight people. But there are a couple of things where I just feel like it's appropriate. All right. So everybody knows that I've spent a lot of time talking about beauty and the beauty hierarchy and how we navigate that stuff and how it affects us, particularly as women, psychologically, emotionally, financially. And something that comes up a couple of times, and I made the whole video, I'm ugly and insecure, but something that came up again because I talked about how desirability does not insulate you from all abuse. I think it insulates you from some kinds of abuse and violence. But we see women who are deemed desirable be abused and violated and neglected and harmed all the time. And, especially in light of that Sweetie Quavo video emerging yesterday, I think that that's still a useful conversation. But something that people throw at me, and I've said it all the time, people use ugly to discredit you when they don't agree or they don't like you. People do that to me all the time. But then a new thing people have started to do is just say you don't like your features. Just say you think your features are unattractive, right? Like society didn't deem them unattractive. You think they're unattractive. So I'm so glad. I love the young girls because I'm glad that the young girls have introduced these ideas of texturism. Well, texturism is a little bit older, but featurism in particular, in addition to our conversations about colorism. Because as somebody who for 31 years has had these features, big lips, I remember as a kid, I remember being 5 years old and hanging out with my friend Jessica and her little brother. We were in the minivan. And when I was 5 years old, Jessica's little brother said, "Why are your lips so big?" That's the first time I remember that. And then, of course, with this nose, all kinds of people make comments about my nose. Black people and now black women make comments about my nose all the time, right? There's no way that you are going to tell me that having large features associated with blackness, right, a specific kind of blackness, are not marginalized, are not deemed ugly. I look great. I look the best I've ever looked. Okay, to be honest, this is not about my self-esteem. When I am talking about beauty and hierarchies, I'm talking about structures. There is no way that you can really tell me that there are certain features that are not deemed ugly when there is a whole cosmetic surgery specialty dedicated to ethnic rhinoplasty. There's a whole cosmetic surgery specialty dedicated to altering ethnic features to make them slimmer and more refined. All kinds of people across all kinds of ethnicities and nationalities and races get smaller nose jobs. Stop. So it's so interesting to me, and I know where these people are coming from. It's so interesting that people can understand the colorism stuff and understand when they're being gaslighted about colorism. Because another thing I understand that gets lobbed at dark-skinned women is, well, you just have to love yourself. Who cares? Who cares if people call dark-skinned women cockroaches? Like, you just have to love it. Like, why does it matter? Because we understand that shit is structural. Because it's damaging, right? Because it is not just about how I feel about myself. Again, I'm fucking killing the game. It is about how people who have big features associated with blackness, associated particularly, right, with like West African, like, that they are marginalized, that they are locked out of opportunities, that they do not have the same kinds of access. That's why I talk about beauty. And as I've said before, you know, the nose stuff is political. I have no desire. I will not change my nose. I think it's important for people to see, like, you can live a great life and be happy and date and fucking make money and live a life of ease and enjoyment and contentment and look like this. With this nose. With no, you know what I'm saying? 30 pounds heavier than the weight that's on my driver's license. I understand we're all navigating this shit in the best way we know how. It's really hard. And I don't expect anybody to completely resist all beauty standards. I don't. But there are many things that we have to really think deeply about and deconstruct and push back on. Why is it that way? It's not natural. It's not inevitable. Why are little girls told from the time that they're really young that their skin is too dark, that their noses are too big, that their lips are too big? You know, this thing, I can tell this story. My last cosmetic dermatology appointment, I was sitting waiting for the doctor to come in, and the nurse was, you know, prepping me. And she said, "Your lips are so beautiful. Are those yours?" And I just like cracked up. Because it's just so, we've come such, you know, those beauty standards are so ephemeral, right? Because going from being 5 years old, sitting in Jessica's mom's van with her, maybe I was 5 or 6, with her little brother being like, ugh, you know, me trying to tuck my lips in, to the white ass nurse being like, wow, like, that's amazing. It has an effect. So that's what I wanted to say on that. The other thing I wanted to talk about with regard to the gaslighting is I did that panel with Angry Black Homo yesterday, Mark, Justin, aka King of Reeds, and Ugo, and it was about Lil Nas X and the imagery, but also the larger cultural statement that Lil Nas X was trying to make about how growing up in really religious household and hearing dogma that said that he was going to be burned in eternal hellfire, how that really impacted him. And there's, I don't know, about 500 comments now. It's going to be a really well-watched video. A lot of hate comments. I have critiques of myself that I'm just trying to work through, you know, like I couldn't see, you know, I take off my glasses now because I'm trying to, you know, give y'all the full look. So I couldn't really see. And then my computer was messing up, and then my internet was messing up, and then I was distracted. And so I wasn't completely, but you know, it's not about me. They brought it. They were exceptional. And there are just a couple of comments that I just want to go through because it don't make no sense. I want to underscore that I understand why people are Christians. I consider myself to be culturally Christian, even though I don't really plan on ever going to church again. I have many Christian friends and family members whom I love dearly and deeply. But there's some issues with the way that people are responding, not only to Lil Nas X, but to that video in particular. So let's just go through. I have a list here of things that I would like to address. So one thing that comes up a lot when we talk about homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, patriarchy in churches, the thing that people often say is, well, that's just people who misinterpret the Bible. That's just people who are misinterpreting Christianity. Like, they're weaponizing it. And I'm like, okay, So if the majority of people misinterpret the Bible in the same way over thousands of years and build up the institutions around those misinterpretations, there is something wrong with the institution. Just because you magically have the right interpretation does not negate the harm that the popular representation, the most popular dogma has on people. Stop trying to do that not all Christian stuff. It's not helpful, particularly when we are having a discussion with marginalized people who are saying that their lives were ruined. Does that help? All right. There's also all Christians are not the same. My church didn't do that. Yes, it did. If we're talking about homophobia, right, and the way that Christianity demonizes homophobia, yes, it did. If you happen to go to a church that was completely accepting and affirming, you literally went to like the 1% of churches. Yes, it did. And y'all say my church didn't do that because you weren't like, gays are going to hell. But would you, the more popular way to do that now, the contemporary way of doing that now is being like, we hate the sin. We love the sinner, but we hate this. We just want you to live right. That's what y'all do now. The message is still the same. The harm is still the same. So unless you are going to a church that explicitly says, God made you gay, we love you, bring your partner, we will perform a gay wedding, we will fight for your rights. Unless you're that, which you ain't, you're still participating in harm. You are still perpetuating harm. You don't care that you participate in harm because it doesn't hurt you. But like, let's be real. Okay. Somebody said, and the so-called friendly churches always say, we don't agree with a certain lifestyle. Yes, the lifestyle shit comes up over and over. Well, or it'll be like the don't ask, don't tell stuff. Well, that's your business. We don't want to promote the lifestyle. We don't want to condone. We don't agree with, but that's your business. Same shit. Moving on. The next comment that came up a lot was, can you imagine if somebody did this to another religion? Can you imagine if somebody said these things about Judaism or Islam? It happens. And this is why y'all be saying stuff and not even really paying attention to cultural conversations. People who are raised in Judaism, people who are raised in Islam have all kinds of critiques of those religions. Publicly. And they get all kinds of pushback. One of my favorite shows of the last 2 or 3 years was Orthodox. Right? The show for about Orthodox Judaism that abused that girl. It happens. I'm even talking about, I had a little controversy when I talked about cuties. Like a central part of cuties is a condemnation of the ways that Islam represses young women in particular. It happens all the time. It might not be as explicit. Well, sometimes it is as explicit, right? It might not be in the exact same way as what Lil Nas X does, but people who are marginalized and abused by their faith communities critique those communities also. So what I need y'all to do is just expand your horizons a little bit, right? Really engage with people who are not exactly into what you're into. Because critique of faith, particularly of the Abrahamic religions, is old. What are y'all talking about? Let me go to some of these comments. The only black churches I've been to that say it's natural have LGBT pastors. That's true. We embrace the traditional view of the institution of marriage. Yeah. That's like the dog whistle, totally. I drag Islam every chance I get. Yes. There are megachurches that say we welcome anybody who is struggling with same-sex attraction or something to that effect, and celebrities promote them as LGBT friendly. Right. All right. I also have a question in here. Let me try to get to that question. What do you explain what you mean by culturally Christian? I grew up sorry, I don't want my nipples to be out. So sorry. I definitely think that there are some mores about Christianity that I have internalized. So definitely the way that I feel about this idea that Cornel West cites a lot about brotherly love, and this idea that shows up in Martin Luther King's work a lot about beloved community. Like, that stuff I vibe with. Yeah. So there's like a Christian ethic of love and forgiveness that I've absolutely internalized. Yeah. But I think I take it further. Because, for most Christians, they love and forgive the people they fuck with. like, you love and forgive only if it is beneficial to you. But I try to take it a little bit further than that. Totally. But also, I listen to lots of gospel music. I have a lot of gospel music on my happy, upbeat playlist. It's just really, that kind of stuff is really deeply embedded in my psyche. It's the agenda. Yeah. And then there's he's pushing an agenda. Do you understand how deeply Christianity is embedded in so many of our cultural institutions? There is this really conservative idea that is complete bullshit, that critical race theory is taking over everything, that identity politics is taking over everything. No. That Western Christian imperialism undergirds so many of our institutions, from governments to schools, the way things are structured, expectations. It's everywhere. But we don't even question it. Even the fact that our society, I'm American, so I live in the United States. Our society is built up around a two-parent family, right? And for a long time, it was the male-female two-parent nuclear family. Now, Obergefell, the Obergefell case, now their same-sex marriage is legal, but it's still fundamentally about the two-parent family. Like, that's rooted in Christianity. The fact that there are no social supports for alternative forms of family, that's Western patriarchal Christian imperialism. What is it, y'all? Obergefell v... What is it? I can't remember. That's a nasty dog whistle. Cultural Marxism, it's harmful nonsense. Talking point, yeah. Never forget what Eddie Long did. Totally. Christianity is an agenda. Absolutely. And heterosexuality is an agenda. I mean, I have talked all the time and repeatedly about how most of the media we consume, the books we read, movies, television, is hetero love propaganda. It's all about falling in love, finding a partner, live happily ever after. Even little kids shows have that. So that's why I get so confused when every once in a while there's an announcement that Nickelodeon or Disney, they're going to have, a same-sex couple. And I'm like, but kids see hetero couples, kids see hetero couples all the time. Kissing, hugging, falling in love, getting married. That's not propaganda. That's not an agenda. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You're just homophobic. The next, something that really came up for me. I'm really fortunate to have access to religious scholars and theologians, even pastors, and I've had really deep conversations with them about this stuff over the years. And something that's really been made clear to me is most people who call themselves Christians do not know enough about Christianity to really be arguing. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not actually a reason for most of us to go back and forth with Christians about the foundations of Christianity, the historical foundations, the unsoundness of a lot of these ideas, these tenets, these doctrines, right? That they're not really even in the Bible, right? The way that you're interpreting it is really like misinterpretation. Like, people don't really go that deep. And so we end up having the same conversations over and over again because people are just regurgitating talking points and like the bad, really superficial talking points. And so when we're talking about hell in particular, I just had this conversation yesterday with a religious studies scholar about how even the conversations about hell are so literal when in the Bible there's a lot of debate, and I think he came down on the side of that hell that's outlined in Revelations that's not a real thing. But people are not really. And so there is a thing about how Christianity teaches literalism. Well, I think Western education in general teaches literalism. So people just generally have a hard time wading through images and ideas and seeing symbols and archetypes and digging beneath the surface and saying, okay, what does this mean? What is the history? How does that connect to this? How does this idea in this book connect to that idea in that book? Most people, frankly, don't have the range. And I don't have a nice way to say that. There's not a non-elitist asshole way to say. You simply do not have the range to talk about this book that you believe is holy and the images that it contains and the historical references because you have not gone deep enough. You have not spent enough time with it. And so what happens when we're talking about a Lil Nas X and when we're talking about a Montero, which is filled with images, which was filled with illusions, so many illusions that art historian Kimberly wants to make a whole video breaking it down. And I also have so many notes about the illusions that we didn't get to in the video, in the panel video, because the conversation was so good about other things, but I was trying to sneak it in. But if you really are spending a lot of time with that stuff, it's so, but y'all, most people don't have that. I remember a couple of years ago, remember when we used to be able to gather with family over holidays? My family is very, very religious, right? I mean, by religious, I mean Christian, right? Explicitly Christian, okay. And a couple of years ago, I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and we were having a family get-together right after Christmas. And I got so pissed off at them. We got into the biggest argument because I was going back and forth with these people about whether or not St. Peter was the first pope of the Catholic Church. And I was like, and they were like, no, that's not in the Bible. And I'm like, you guys, it's history, And I was getting so mad, and I was, trying to bring them sources, and they're like, that's not in the Bible. It's history. It's literally European history. So anyways, I said that to say that I love them. I respect them. I think that they're smart. But I do think a lot of Christians are just not well versed in the actual history, right? It's not just a book of stories. This is a moment with lots of historical context, particularly I mean, oh God, I can't get into this, but you know what was happening in Rome at the time. Let me look at these comments. Oh gosh. I love that you made a space that is safe for religious criticism for both progressive religious people and non-religious folks. I've seen others centering themselves and religion in the conversation. And that brings me to the next point that came up a lot in those comments. People saying, you should have had a Christian on this panel, or you should have had a straight man on this panel. For what? For what? What would that have added? What would that have added? Truly. If we're having a conversation that's supposed to enrich the already ubiquitous conversation around Lil Nas X and Montero and the images and what it means, why would I invite a defender of the institution that has been deemed abusive into a conversation about the abuses of the institution? It don't make no sense. It does not make sense, you guys. And why would I invite a straight man into that conversation? What would that have added? When we're talking about black men and queerness and queer identity, what would that have added? It's nothing. I do not feel compelled to pretend like all positions and viewpoints and arguments are valid or legitimate or worth dealing with. In that conversation, it is not useful to have a devout Christian who's gonna tell us, well, that's not really how it is. What? But also, if you're looking for straight men's commentary on Montero, go on Twitter, go on YouTube, go on Instagram, go on TikTok. It's everywhere. That is the default. Just because in this particular case, Lil Nas X has expertly been able to craft up an ecosystem around conversation, right? And because he has the strongest voice, because he is the most powerful, because he is the subject, does not mean that the status quo does not still cater to cis hetero patriarchy. You know, just imagine if we were having a conversation about how Ivy Leagues racially abused black students. And I had a conversation filled with black students there. And then I said, just to provide a counterpoint, let's have a white administrator from Harvard come in and tell us how great Harvard, like what? In any other context, it doesn't make any sense. All right. The other thing I really appreciated about that panel, though, was this idea that just because people have similar kinds of experiences that they're going to say the same thing is just not true. I appreciated, sorry, it's my nipple out. I appreciated that Ugo and Justin and Mark, that they were able to build off of each other's thoughts. So somebody would say something and then you add on to that and you add on to that. And then it goes, that's a great productive conversation for me. And then the last thing, let me look again. Yeah, queer people are done reasoning with straight black men. They don't get it and probably never will. They do not. These cishet black men are still out here defending Bill Cosby and R. Kelly. Why? Make it make sense. It bugged me when people were like, this is bad for black people or queer people. Just say you want white bigots to approve of you and go. It's the naive but good faith called centrism. All right. Last thing. Because this is like another big one. People saying over and over again, well, why does he have to talk about being gay? He's only doing this because he's gay. He's only famous because he's gay. You know, I'd like him if he didn't talk about being gay so much. Are y'all okay? I mean, clearly not, but how does that make sense to you? Because all I have to do is just change the adjectives around just a little bit. And imagine a white person telling a black person, why do you have to talk about being black so much? Why does it matter? Why are you making your whole identity around being black? Why are you making art about being black? Why are you making art about racist, white supremacist institutions? You guys, it's just a small little tweak. But you can't get there if you're homophobic. You can't get there if you're afraid of queerness, right? And by afraid of queerness, I mean a queerness that you cannot profit from. A queerness that does not serve your needs. Because as I mentioned in the video, most of the most deeply embedded cultural institutions in Black America have a parasitic relationship to queerness. An extractive relationship to queerness, where we like what you can do for us. We like what you can bring to us. We like it if you can make us dance and if you sing well. But we don't want you to be able to like live fully. We don't like that. That's an inconvenience. That's all I got. I'm just like begging y'all to have some self-awareness. Just a little bit. All right. Hair and makeup. Somebody said yes. Right? That's the other way that people exploit their relationship to queer folks. Via aesthetics. Absolutely. And aesthetics, not just in hair and makeup. Aesthetics as in how you present yourself. Your mannerisms. The kind of words that you use. I've been using it's giving. And I'm like, where did I get it's giving from? Oh, Black queer folks is where I got it's giving. It's giving. That's where I got that from. I didn't even realize it. Because they're so important to our culture. Our modes of expression. Thank you to whoever just bought a badge. Straight Black men real quiet about the homoeroticism that's been prominent in hip hop since the 80s. I mean, honestly, and I had this conversation yesterday, homoeroticism is present deep in all kinds of Black. It's deep in Black church culture. It's deep in funk. It's deep in disco. It's deep in R&B. Like, homoeroticism is the name of the game, particularly when it comes to male performers. Black male performers in particular. I remember people wanting Kaepernick to protest in appropriate places. Okay, I agree 100%. Definitely will never get there. But where did you get the necklace? This necklace is from Amazon. Other people tried to say he's doing this for money, as if that invalidates the art. Like, imagine if we said this to doctors and not just artists. I mean, yes, this is a product. But everything is a lemonade is a product, right? I mean, Beyonce, I'm talking about. Everything is a product. Even cis Black male relationships, it's there. Totally. Tupac in the bathtub, absolutely. Queerness is a part of pop culture, specifically Black queerness. Yes. Did Slay come from their community too? Yes. Okay. That's all I have, you guys. I just wanted to, work through some of those ideas. As always, this will go up on the second YouTube channel. If you find it, you find it. It'll be sent out over the Substack. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for all of the feedback. The good and the bad. The other thing, I guess we'll wrap it up on this. I have always stood tall in the fact that I believe that feminism is to deconstruct the systems that marginalized people, all of those systems. So it's not just about making sure that cishet Black women get to live their best lives. It's making sure that all of these systems, homophobia, transphobia, classism, white supremacy, patriarchy, even white Christian imperialism, that we tackle those things. Because even if you feel like, as a cishet Black woman, that homophobia has nothing to do with you, that white imperialist Christian imperialism has nothing to do with you, it does. There are no homophobic men who are not also misogynistic. It does not exist. It does not exist. And a lot of cishet women overlook homophobia because it's fucking hard out here and you want to have a warm bed at night. It's not in your best interest. A lot of cishet Black women want to overlook the violence of the church because, I get it, it gives you some form of comfort. You have a religious community that you're deeply invested in. But the way that the patriarchy that originates from a lot of these Christian institutions, the way that it seeps out is not in your best interest. So the kind of feminist I am says that because all modes of oppression are linked, I'm really going to take a look at all of it. I'm not just always going to center cishet Black women in the work that I create, or in the spouses that, or in the ideas that I espouse. It doesn't make sense. If we're talking about liberation, if we're talking about getting free, what did Audre Lorde say? There are no single issue struggles. Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.